cheat code basically for gardeners, because we can deal with a lot of issues. And if you slow down and you actually think about what plants you're planting in the specific spot, you can really have a really fabulous garden, even when you have major issues. So a little bit about me. My name is Janey Santos. I am a garden educator. I have a gardening YouTube channel where I share my gardening journey 5 days a week in my home. I live in Davis. I'm a master gardener as of 2023 in the Yolo County. I love it. It's fabulous. It's my favorite thing. I always tell everybody that it's a wonderful thing to do. And as of last year, I am officially an author, which is just crazy. I teamed up with Michael Glassman, who is a landscape designer. You might have seen him on like HGTV and stuff like that. He actually lives in Davis. And he and I wrote a book together called Solving Problems in the Landscape. And that's kind of what this talk is based on, because he and I got together as a landscape designer and a gardener, obsessive gardener, and shared and discussed ways that we could solve common problems in the landscape. So that's kind of where a lot of my reference is coming from. Today's focus on for this presentation, though, isn't exactly what we have in the book. It's really specifically how to use plants as problem solvers in the garden, and how this is going to address real life issues such as poor drainage, which we here in Davis and Yolo County, Sacramento County, we often have those issues because we get all of our rain in the wintertime. So if we have poor drainage in any area of our garden, it can be absolutely detrimental, and it can really damage a lot of plants that we have. It can damage our hardscape, it can damage our grass, and so on and so on. Soil erosion is another issue, not so much for me because my landscape is completely flat, but other people that live on kind of hilly areas, soil erosion is really important because the wind and the rain can uh, get rid of the topsoil, the precious soil that we have, and cause major issues. But luckily, plants can help with that problem. We all know about limited water and water restrictions and wanting to save water. So that can be an issue for our garden. And then also we have something that is really interesting for me, especially in my new garden. I actually moved into my home just under 2 years ago, and it was really difficult for me to figure out the sun versus shade components of the garden, specifically right up against my house. And one of the things that I really learned about in the garden was sunshade transition areas. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But basically, what it is it's an area of your garden, or it's a garden bed that is not always full sun, not always part shade, not always full shade. It kind of depends on where you are in the year, and depends on where the sun is up in the sky. So I'll show you guys a little bit in more detail as we get to that. And then, of course, we have neglected or tough areas. If your garden is big enough, and even if your garden is small, you're going to have an area of your garden that's a tough spot to plant up, a tough area, whether it's behind trees and you don't notice it, or it's too far away, or it's been compacted because it gets walked on a lot, or maybe your dog uses it as a bathroom area. We all have these neglected or tough areas, and plants can really help solve that issue. Okay, so the goal of this talk is to share practical plant-based solutions. And you'll see what I mean in a second, because in my book, we talked about lots of solutions for garden problems, but they weren't always practical, or shall I say, cost efficient, right? If you work with Michael Glassman, a landscape designer, and you have a problem with erosion, he might recommend terracing your garden, which is a huge job, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And so the goal of this talk is to actually take that down a couple levels and just think about, okay, what plants can we plant on that hill instead of terracing the whole garden and making it this big thing? If we could just kind of make it yeah, make it better with plant material. Another thing that I really want to focus on in this talk is inspiring confidence in the right plant, right place approach. And this is really, really important for sustainable gardening. I think it is so important for gardening in general. If you want a successful garden, if you want a garden that's thriving, you have to think about the right plant, right place approach. Or I shouldn't say you have to, you should think about the right plant, right place approach, because it's really going to make you a better gardener. It's going to make you look better. And then I want to offer examples for our area that you can use or recommend to other gardeners. And then I'll open it up to you guys to give suggestions to all of us if you have some really, really great plants that work really well. Because I would love to hear what you guys know too. Okay, so why use plants? As I was saying in the book, Michael Glassman and I, we had a three-pronged approach to problems in the garden, and the approach that you were to choose, or a combination of approaches, is different for everybody. And the three approaches that we talked about were the gardener's approach, which is what I'm going to talk about today, the DIYer approach, which is something that we could do on a weekend. We can roll up our sleeves, we can go to the big box store, buy a couple things, and take care of the problem ourselves. Or we can do a landscape designer approach, which involves hiring people, having equipment come in, and take care of the issue. And today we're talking about the gardener approach, one, because we're gardeners. This is a master gardener presentation, and it's a nature-based solution. It's cost effective, it's environmentally friendly. You're not adding any more hardscape to your garden that's going to limit the drainage. You're not going to mess with the nature that you have in your garden. You're not going to mess with the pollinators. And honestly, to me, when you use plants, it's a long-term approach. If you pick the right plants to solve the problems in your garden, it's going to be a long-term thing that's going to actually help solve the problem, as compared to putting in, say, like a drainage pipe or a French drain or an area drain or something like that. That's great, but that's kind of messing with the natural um, structure that's already there. So I always think using plants is a really, really great option. I probably think that because I'm a gardener, just like all of you guys. But I really think it's a great option, and one that you can lean to first before you move on to the more intensive interventions, such as the DIYer approach or the landscape designer approach. Um, I don't know what is wrong with my presentation. Probably has to do with the internet here in the library, so I'm sorry. But you guys, you can see the word, so we're good. Okay, understanding your garden. So one of the most important things when you have a problem in your garden, the most important thing is to understand your site, understand your garden, understand what sun you have. Is it full sun? Is it part sun? Is it full shade? Is it a sun transition area? Is water getting to the area? Is your irrigation working? Is there slope? Is there drainage? How's the soil? You know, get a soil test. And then also, like I said, external factors. Is your pets using this area of the garden as a bathroom? Are your kids running around on this part of your lawn, which is compacting it and making it difficult? You know, different things like that. So understanding your garden is one of the key things in solving problems. It's kind of the same thing if you've ever been to or heard a integrated pest management talk, which I love integrated pest management. And I know it sounds boring, but if you guys have a chance to listen to someone talk about integrated pest management, I really recommend it, because it has kind of the same concepts as what I'm talking about today. And concept, you know, number one is understand your garden so you can understand what's going on. And integrated pest management is how to deal with pests in your garden without overdoing it. And what I'm talking about today is how to deal with problems in your garden without overdoing it. So understanding what your garden is super, super important, and the first step for everything. So right plant, right place. You've probably heard this, you know, said in passing. If you've ever heard a master gardener presentation, you've probably heard this principle before. It's a foundational principle in sustainable gardening and landscaping, but it's not just in my, like, that's a definition of it. The definition is selecting plants that are naturally suited to the specific conditions of the planting site. if you want to be a good gardener, if you want to look like a good gardener, if you want the least amount of stress while you're gardening, following the right plant, right place principle is key. And this took me as a gardener a really long time to learn. For example, when I bought my first home in Novato, California, I wanted hydrangeas in the front of my house so bad. I didn't care that it was south facing. I didn't care that I had any irrigation. I didn't care that there were rocks anywhere. I wanted the blue hydrangeas, which there's absolutely no way. It's too hot. It didn't get enough drip irrigation. It got too much sun. And I think I replaced those hydrangeas 3 or 4 times to trying to make it work. And it just was not the right plant for the right place. And, and I've kind of learned this lesson over time that, you have to follow this concept for your garden to work well. So right plant, right place, this concept guides you to choose plants based on sunlight levels. Like for instance, those hydrangeas, when it was south facing in my home, it had way too much sun for those poor hydrangeas in zone 9, and it couldn't handle it, right? So you have to consider the sunlight levels. You have to consider your soil type. Do you have alkaline soil? And you're trying to plant a plant like a gardenia that likes acidic soil, right? That might not be the right plant for that right place. Is there moisture availability? Is there irrigation? Is there sprinklers? Is there, is it a boggy area in your garden? Is it a dry level area in your garden? You have to understand the climate, right? So we all live in zone 9B area, so we understand our climate and we plant certain plants here, but there are other plants that I would love to plant in my zone 9 garden, but it's just not going to work for my zone 9 garden. You also have to think about space constraints. We can have a small space and shove a plant in there and say, okay, I'm going to prune you till, till you're almost dead, but I want to make you fit into this small place. Eventually that plant is going to get so stressed out because you keep pruning it, trying to keep it in this small place, that it's going to get sick and it's going to die. And it's just not the right plant for the right place. And then finally, pest pressure. Say you really want to plant a peach in your garden, or a nectarine, but it constantly has a fungal disease every single year. That might not be the right plant for your garden because you're susceptible to fungal diseases like peach leaf crawl. So the big question is, I kind of already addressed this, but why? Why follow the right plant for the right place? Why it matters is you get healthier plants, right? If you're not constantly pruning that plant to fit in a small area of your garden, it's going to be healthier. It's going to be happier. It's going to be less resistant to disease. It's going to take less maintenance, right? So you're not constantly having to take care of your plants because you planted it in the wrong spot. It's going to have water conservation. Again, back to the hydrangea, like for me to keep that hydrangea alive in the front of my first home, I had to give it so much water. It couldn't even take up the amount of water that it needed. And it was I was wasting water when I was trying to get those hydrangeas to live. When you have a right plant in the right place, you can have improved soil and erosion control, right? So say you're planting on a hill and you plant something that doesn't have a really developed root system. When the rain and the wind comes during the winter time, you're going to lose a lot of your topsoil and you're going to lose that plant as well. So it's not the right plant for the right place. And then again, as I referred to IPM, integrated pest management, before, if the plants are happy, if you're not constantly trying to force them to be happy in a place that they're not happy, then they're going to be less resistant to pests. So therefore, you're going to need less treatment, less chemicals, less pest control. Everything's just going to be better, and you're going to be a happier gardener. You're going to be a less stressed gardener, and you're going to look like a better gardener because you chose the right plant for the right place. Okay, so now let's start talking about problems, different problems. And these are I only chose 5 problems and addressing them. But the idea of this talk is that you can kind of see whatever problem you have, there's a plant to deal with that problem. And you just kind of have to dive in, do some research, and try and figure out what plant is going on. But let's talk about a couple examples of problems that you might have in your garden. The first one is drainage issues. And drainage issues, this is just a picture I found on Canva, but it shows a really important example of what can happen during our rainy seasons, right? Like I was saying, we get all of our rain during the winter time, during a very short period of the year. So we get large amounts of rain. And if we have poor drainage in our garden, it can cause pretty serious damage. It can cause root rot for your plants. So if you're having puddles of water or water that's not draining, some of the plants that can't handle that kind of drainage or that kind of moisture can get root rot and can die, and you can lose your plants over the winter season. Poor drainage can also cause compaction, which can decrease the air pockets in the soil and make it harder for plants to thrive in your garden, just simply because you have poor drainage during the winter time. And then also runoff is a really big issue. If you're constantly having drainage issues, and then instead of the water soaking down into your soil and it runs off into the street, that's stripping your garden of the topsoil, of the beautiful nutrients that you want in your garden, and that's going to make your garden worse off in the long haul. So if we weren't focusing on plant-based solutions and we were focusing on either DIY or designer or contractor solutions, some of them are berms, swales, which I'll talk about more in a little bit, like a dry creek bed, drainage pipes like a French drain or area drain, dry wells. All of these things can definitely help with drainage issues. And if the problem is severe enough, you might have to go that far. The plants might not be able to take care of the issue. But if it's a minor issue, you might be able to take care of it with plant material. I want to show you guys, this is a video from one of my YouTube videos of my front garden, and you can see I have a dry creek bed in the middle of my center island. And the reason why the dry creek bed is there, because it's pretty, right? But it's also because I have really poor drainage in this area. On the left there where that grass is, that's actually my leach field. And it's just really, really bad drainage. And so what we decided to do is to put a dry creek bed down there in the middle so that all of the water can kind of pour into that dry creek bed. And that's the area the water can sit while it's percolating down into my soil. So the water's not draining off and going into the street, but it allows me to plant all of these dry plants, these plants that need a little bit less water, and still have them in a place that has kind of poor drainage. So that's of course not a plant material option. That's a maybe a DIY or a contractor option, but I still wanted to point this out just to show you guys that I'm not saying that it's only plants, that it's a combination of the approaches. But if you start thinking about different plants that might be able to help, maybe say you don't have a leach field and you just have an area of your garden that doesn't drain as well as you would like it to, planting plants like sedge, carex, or Siberian iris, or willow, California gray rush, bald cypress, or canna lilies, if you want some blooms, can really help. And I'm not going to go over every single plant, but for instance, sedge or carex is really a fabulous, fabulous plant if you have a really poor drainage area, because it can thrive in boggy soil. So it's going to live there and it's going to be happy. But then once it's growing in that poor drainage site, it can act like a sponge and it can actually soak up that excess water. And it will slow the runoff of the water. So think about the runoff is when you have excess water and there's so much water that it just flows off of your property. So if the sedge is there and slowing that runoff, it's going to slow the rate of your topsoil running off, and leaving your property. So your organic matter leaving your property, which is really important. Sedge also has dense roots that improves soil structure, which ultimately improves drainage. So think about this plant and it has all its roots going down into the soil and it's opening up air pockets in that soil. And those air pockets are basically like pipes that are going to help that water percolate down into the ground and hopefully down into the water table. So planting sedge in a poor drainage area can really, really help. Another example is California gray rush. rush or juncus, it naturally grows in creek beds. It already wants to grow in this area. It already wants to grow in an area that has excess water. And the roots kind of do the same thing as the carex. It breaks up the compaction and it allows the water to absorb into the soil. And then the same thing, like if you look at that foliage, water is going to get stuck in that foliage and it's going to kind of sit there and it's going to allow that water to soak in to the area that the gray rush wants it to be, but also it's going to help soak in instead of just standing on top and even worse, flowing off into other areas of your garden and into drainage and away from your property, which is what you don't want. Canna lilies are really fun because they're really beautiful. They're gorgeous. They bloom all season long. They love wet feet. They absolutely love wet feet, right? They're a tropical plant and they grow in really, really heavy, soggy soil. And the large leaves of the canna, you can kind of see it in the background, and the big rhizomes, they suck up that moisture. So again, it's another sponge that's sucking up that moisture and taking that standing water out of your poor drainage area. So you might not need a dry creek bed. You might not need a swale. You might not need an area drain or something like that. You might need to just plant a whole bunch of beautiful canna lilies in your garden, and that might solve the issue that you have of poor drainage. Problem number two is erosion. And this is a picture that Michael Glassman actually used for our book. And you can see what a nightmare this, this home is dealing with and the amount of erosion that's happening in front of the home. And, you know, what they've kind of done to try and protect it a little bit, but you can even see the soil, the topsoil is running onto the sidewalk and it is just an absolute mess. So the challenges with erosion are soil loss, water runoff, like I was talking about, root instability. It's going to be hard. Like you can see, nothing's growing in that garden right there in front of that house because it's just there's no stability. Nothing can grow there. So non-plant solutions that you can use for erosion control, you know, when we're talking about a lot of money, cha-ching, terracing, retaining walls. A little bit less expensive is just even placing boulders in the area. Imagine if you placed 5 or 6 boulders in that area, that's going to keep that soil in place and kind of limit it from sliding down. I wanted to show you guys this picture right here because I mean, can you imagine the problems this poor homeowner has with erosion, with drainage? Everything is sloping right to the house. All the topsoil is sloping down into the. I mean, it is just a definite problem. So again, if the situation is not severe, of course, not severe, you can treat erosion with plants really easily. And I spelled Myoporum wrong, but ignore that I. So examples are Myoporum, which is a really, really fabulous plant. And if you guys don't know about it, I'm happy to tell you. Yarrow is another fabulous one because of its root system. Vinca minor, but I'll say that with a big asterisk. Panicum, which is just a type of grass, spreads by rhizomes, and those rhizomes are going to grab that soil and keep it in place. And then even something like a penstemon that has a really fabulous taproot. Myoporum is a carpet-like ground cover. It does really, really well in our climate. I think there's even a variety called Puda Creek, Myoporum Puda Creek. It has really shallow roots, but they're really wide. They spread over a big area, and you can see that this Myoporum has spread over the soil. And so it's going to limit the rain and the wind from blowing away or washing away that topsoil simply because this Myoporum has spread over it and those roots have spread over the area and it's basically like Velcro and it's basically grabbing it and it will spread really quickly. If you can see right here, I'm suspecting that this is one plant, right? And it spreads super, super quickly. And so that means that it's going to grow in enough time before we hit the rainy season. And so it's going to help with that erosion almost immediately. So it's a really great plant. And I know a lot of landscape designers use this plant for that exact reason. Periwinkle or Vinca minor, my last house that I lived in, we had quite a lot of kind of hilly areas, and we had when we moved in, there was Vinca minor everywhere. I'm talking absolutely everywhere. And it was great because it helped with the erosion, right? And it limited the erosion on my property. but it was so hard to remove. So just a big asterisk if you plant periwinkle, just know it is a really, really hard plant to remove. I don't want to call it invasive, but it was pretty invasive. Its root network binds the soil. So basically these roots, these little white roots will spread out and it will, stick itself into the soil, and then that will kind of hold the soil there. So they're basically like spikes throughout your soil, and it's going to make it so that soil doesn't erode, but it also is very, very hard to remove. So just know that. The cool thing about this one though is it's evergreen. The Myoportum is evergreen as well, and so that means it has this beautiful leaf canopy that's going to limit the rain and limit the wind even during the winter time, when we're dealing with that type of weather. Penstemon is a really great plant for us. It has, like I said, it has that really deep taproot, and that taproot is like a spike that's going to keep the soil in place, right? So think about the boulders that you would put on a slope. The taproot is basically working the same way as the boulders, of course, at a smaller level. It has, instead of a spreading habit, it has more of a clumping habit, but that clumping habit with those taproots help keep the soil in place, which is really great. And then the cool thing about penstemon is it grows really well in rocky areas. And oftentimes slopes are really, really rocky soil, just based on the natural development of the area. And so this is something that can actually grow in rocky soil and help with the erosion. So penstemon is a really fabulous option if you're dealing with erosion in your garden. Problem number three, this picture probably looks very familiar to a lot of you around here this time of year, but it's drought and limited water. And there are different ways that we can have, this, whether it's water restrictions, watering restrictions, whether you want to be responsible and you don't want to water too much, you don't want to pay for water, you want sustainable choices, right? And you don't want things to die just because you're not giving them water. It can be a really, really big issue. I know it's a really big issue for me. So for a non-plant solution, you can install an expensive irrigation. You can dig out your trenches, you can hire a irrigation contractor and add irrigation to the whole area. Or you can just cover it with hardscape, right? There's a lot of people that do that where they just kind of cover their garden with rocks and that's it, right? But that's not as pretty as plants. So different plants that can solve the problem of dealing with drought or dealing with limited water, even at times, are yarrow, lavender, artemisia, my new favorite one this year, which is called Gara. I'll show you that in a little bit. And then Matilaha poppy. And that's a really great one. And that's actually a California native and it grows native. And so it's going to be really, really great for our climate. So Gara is this beautiful, it's also called butterfly flower, and it has a really deep taproot system. And you guys will see, I'm kind of saying the same things over and over again because they are these plant adaptations that actually help your area out, help your garden out. And it's often, the type of roots that it has, the type of leaf structure that it has, and the type of evergreen or soil considerations that it has. So the Gara has a deep taproot system, and that deep taproot system goes deep down into the soil. And so even if your soil looks like this, right, and it looks like there's absolutely no water there, deep, deep down underneath there still is some water there, and the Gara deep taproot can reach that water once it gets established. So planting Gara, say in the fall, where there's access to water and it's going to help that plant grow, it's going to establish its taproot system. Then during the summer, when water is more scarce, it's already going to have developed its taproot and it's going to be able to handle the drought a lot better. The structure of Gara is also very airy. It's the stems are very rigid and the leaves are really, really tiny. And that is limiting the amount of evaporation from the leaves and from the plant, which helps it save water. It's native to dry prairies of the southern United States, like in Texas. And so you can imagine what that looks like. That looks very similar to that picture that I showed you, right? And so it's going to be able to handle those conditions. Yarrow is another example of a really, really great plant that can solve a lot of issues because of its deep fibrous roots. Yarrow is a great plant also that helps with erosion control because of its deep fibrous roots. It has feathery leaves that have less stoma on them, so there's going to be less evaporation, so it doesn't need as much water. It also has a really cool adaptation in summer where it will actually die back. Instead of a plant dying back in the winter, like herbaceous perennials do, yarrow will actually die back if it's too hot or if there's not enough water. And it's the way that it will actually save itself, and it'll save its root system. And then when there's access to water again, it'll bloom again. So it might not look beautiful at time during times of drought, it might not look amazing all the time, but it's still going to be alive, and you're still going to have a garden basically. And then lavender is a really great example. I say lavender with a big asterisk because I feel like lavender here where we live needs more water than is recommended online. If you see online, they'll often talk about lavender as a plant that needs absolutely no water and you can neglect it. But I've gone to the lavender growers like in the valley, and they all say that lavender does need supplemental water. So the idea with lavender is that you still need to water it where we live, but it can handle times of drought better than other plants, meaning it can't handle no water, but it can handle prolonged periods of no water without too much damage to the plant, kind of like the yarrow. Lavender also has woody structure, has woody stems that store the moisture. So when it is during drought, it still has some moisture. And then it has those thin, light colored leaves that reflect sunlight. So it's not going to evaporate the precious water as quickly. The next problem that I wanted to talk to you guys about is sun transition zones. And sun transition zones are areas of your garden when in the wintertime or certain times of the year, I should say, it's full shade, and then certain times of the year it's full sun. Or maybe not maybe it's part shade and then it's full sun, or maybe it's full shade and part sun. Basically, the idea is if you look on a plant tag and a plant says, "Oh, this plant can handle full sun," and then you plant it in a sun transition garden. And so the plant does fabulous during the summertime when it's full sun, but it dies during the wintertime when it's full shade because the sun is behind the house, as you can see with this picture right here. So it's something to think about, and it's something that, like I was saying, in my new property, I was having difficult figuring it out. I had to go through a whole 12 months to figure out where my sun transition gardens were and what plants I could plant in that specific area. And I think that this is a really common problem that doesn't get a lot of attention because it's such a prolonged problem over 12 months of the year. And a lot of people don't realize that this might be the issue that's going on with their plant because they planted a full shade plant and then in the dog days of summer, it's getting too much sun, or vice versa. So the non-plant solutions that you can do for sun transition zones are something like sunshades or umbrellas or planting big trees to give you more shade, or even installing something like a pergola or something like that. And you can see right here, this is the garden that I was talking about. This is what I call my secret garden. And when I first moved into my house, I called it my secret shade garden because I moved in August, September when the sun was lower in the sky. This is a north facing wall on my house. So that time of year, this was full shade. And so what I did is I planted this garden up full shade plants. I did all full shade plants. Well, the next year, when the sun got higher in the sky and at about May or something like that, the left side of this garden bed was full, hot, 8 hours of sun, and all of my shade plants absolutely fried. And it took me a while to realize what was going on and that this was not a shade garden. And I had looked at it at a particular time of year and then didn't pay attention to anything else. And I basically planted it too early. So a way to solve this issue is to plant plants that can handle varying amounts of light. And there actually are a lot of plants. If you look, you can find plants that can handle full shade, and full sun, depending on the time of year. And it's kind of hard to find the information on this because a lot of plant companies cater to the entire United States, meaning all zones. And so a lot of plant companies will call certain plants um, annuals when actually they're perennials for us here in Zone 9B, meaning they're going to overwinter for us. So they will say, for instance, a begonia, they will say a begonia is they can handle it can handle full sun, but they won't talk about the winter time or anything like that because they're not expecting that begonia to overwinter for the majority of the country. Luckily for us in Zone 9B, begonias will overwinter for us and we can use them as perennials, certain varieties. And so we have to know, can they handle full sun and can they handle full shade? And there are varieties that can handle full sun and full shade, and they're fabulous. Another one, salvia, specifically Mystic Spire salvia. That's one of my favorite plants. There's different names of it, different, I don't want to say species. There are different brand names of this plant, but you can find it and it can handle full shade, it can handle part shade, it can handle part sun, and it can handle full sun. It's just a really cool plant that I rely on heavily in lots of areas of my garden. Boxwood is a known one that is known for being able to handle full sun and full shade. And that's a great plant if you're dealing with a garden that maybe there's a tree and the tree is shading this part of the garden, but the garden extends out even further past the tree. And you can plant boxwoods all the way, and those boxwoods are going to be able to handle the shade and the sun. There's also daylily, heuchera, and then Helen von Stein Lamsier. So this is the variety of begonia. It's called Begonia bonariensis. This is the Surefire. This is Surefire Rose, and then I had Surefire White planted in my secret garden. It's because of its adaptable leaf structure, which is, if you can see, they're very waxy leaves. They're waxy dark leaves. That waxiness on those leaves can protect it from too much sun if it's in sun, but it still can photosynthesize in the shade. So it's still getting the energy it needs. And then this plant has been bred over and over and over again to bloom in all lighting conditions. So it can handle the shade and it can handle the sun. It's also been bred for crazy growth. So it's going to grow very quickly, even if there's not enough light for it. So it's a really good choice if you have a sun transition garden. Mystic Spire Salvia, I cannot say enough about this plant. It's such a fabulous one. It photosynthesizes very efficiently, which makes it good for full sun, but also for less sun. Now, I wouldn't say full shade for this plant. I would say part shade or maybe even part sun, right? And the less sun it gets, the more leggy it gets, but it still blooms great. I've grown it in shade and it's done beautifully. And it's because of its parentage, it just has really good genes to it. And it's just a great plant. And then another one is Helen von Stein Lamsier. I love this plant. If you guys have seen my presentations or my YouTube channel, you know I talk about this plant all the time. So it has it has little hairs on it. You can see it's soft, and that actually shades its stoma from the sun so it can handle the sun. But then you can see this variety of Lamsier has really big leaves. And so the large leaf structure can photosynthesize really efficiently, even in more shade. It's also sterile, so there's more energy for growth rather than energy being put into seed production. The only thing I will say about this plant, if you plant it in too much shade, it's at risk of staying too wet. This plant doesn't like to be really damp and really wet. It'll basically rot on you. So you want to plant it, if you're going to plant it in more shade, you want to plant it in more dry shade so that it doesn't rot during the winter time. So that's the only thing I will say about Helen von Stein Lamsier if you're going to put it in a more shady area. But I have planted it in shadier areas, not full shade or deep shade, but say part shade, and it's done really well. Okay, the last problem I'll talk about is neglected or hard to reach areas. So think about a part in your garden that is far out into the back, or or the side of your house that you don't want to bother with. You don't want to bother with, and it hasn't been touched in years. The soil is really compacted. It's really poor soil. There's no drip irrigation or there's no sprinklers over to there, and it's just this ugly part of your garden. So the non-plant solution for that, which is really easy, is put rocks there, replace it with hardscape, put some concrete down. And we all do that, but that costs a lot of money. And that is kind of a big project. Whereas if you just plant a couple really specific plants, it makes it really, really easy. And my favorite option for this is called Matilaha poppy or fried egg poppy. And if you don't know this plant, it actually was in the running up against California golden poppy for being the California state flower, and it lost to the golden poppy, the orange colored poppy. But that should tell you how well adapted this poppy is to our climate. It's native to California. You can see it growing on the hillsides. It has this deep root system that's going to be able to handle the really compacted soil or poor soil or lack of water or neglect or anything like that. And it actually likes neglect. It actually likes you to leave it alone. It doesn't want you to bother with it. If you were to plant this in an area like that, I would say establish it the first year, plant it in the fall so that it gets plenty of water as it's getting established, and then maybe supplemental water it for the first year, and then you can pretty much leave it alone. And it will spread. Just know that the rhizomes will spread, and if you water it too much, it might spread even a little too much. So it's a great plant to just plant it and forget it. And it's really big and it takes up a lot of area. And if you live in Davis, you'll see it on the green belt and it just goes absolutely crazy. So it's a really, really great plant. Manzanita is another one. When you drive up the freeway, if you drive up 5, you'll see manzanita all along the roadside, the freeway, and they're absolutely beautiful. And the same thing with Western redbuds. And they're there because they grow so well in those areas. They don't need any attention. They don't need any supplemental water. They're native to where we are. They have really deep roots. They're really big. They're really beautiful. They have this gorgeous bark. And so it's just a beautiful plant in an area of your garden that you just kind of don't want to deal with, like on the other side of your fence that you don't want to mess with, but you're tired of it just being weeds there. This would be a really great plant for that. So I want to encourage you guys to go out and search more. There's like I only touched the tip of the iceberg. There's WUCOL's plant database, which is water use. Oh, God, Mike, help me with this. But it's basically water use, and it tells you what plants have specific water usage, and you can plant them accordingly based on how much irrigation you have. And so basically, if you have lack of water, you can go to the WUCOL's website and you can figure out what plants would be good for that. Calscape.org, it has so many recommendations for certain problem areas in your garden. So it makes it a piece of cake to be able to figure out exactly what plant is going to solve the problem with whatever you have. And then also, we're so lucky we have the UC Davis Arboretum All-Stars. If you all don't know about that, that's a fabulous database of plants that they've tested and they've figured out work really well in certain areas of our garden. And so you just have to basically look through those all-stars, find those all-stars, plant them in your garden, depending on what issue you have, and it should solve your problem. WUCOL's is water use classification of landscape species. So there you go for that. Okay, so any questions or plant suggestions of plants that maybe I missed that you guys would like to share with everybody? I would love to hear, and let me know if you have any questions.
There's a question
Anybody?
in the chat. Sorry.
Okay, I can't see the chat. I'm sorry.
Okay, I can, so I'll read it to you.
Okay. Oh wait, here it is.
Okay, can you see it?
No, I'm sorry, I can't. Read it to me.
Sorry. Jeanette wants to know something about nurseries. So the commercial nurseries that we have available in Yolo County carry a limited variety of plant species. Where would you suggest purchasing some of the specific variety of plants that you mentioned?
Well, I mean, there's always online, right? You can buy so many plants online, which is really easy, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would say go into Sacramento. You can go to, my favorite is Green Acres. Matsuda's has a lot of the plants. Matsuda's is the wholesaler, a lot of the plants that I talked about. But then there's also other areas. If you go to, God, why am I Morning Sun Herb Farm? That's
Oh,
in Vacaville. She has a lot of the plants that I talked about. A lot of the plants that I talked about. Maybe not the like the name brand plants like the Surefire Rose Begonia, but she has a lot of the other things that are really good. But I will say, if you're having a hard time finding plants, like the Matilla hot poppy, the Matilla hot poppy is really, really hard to find, especially not at the right time of year. Keep checking back and ask the garden center, hey, when's a good time? When is this going to be available? And you might have to go back a couple times throughout the year, which is actually what I had to do from the Matilla hot poppy, is I had to keep going back until it was the right time of year and then it was available. So just kind of have your list of things that you want and keep an eye out. Like basically I have a wish list of things that I want and keep trying to find exactly what plants, and then always ask them. If you guys are familiar with Lemuria Nursery in Dixon, they are more than happy to special order you plants. If there's a specific plant that you want, they will definitely help you with stuff like that. So just be really open about it and be asking and be annoying, basically. Just be annoying.
Yeah,
Okay, I can. Sorry.
Redwood Barn will do special orders too.
Oh,
So
okay. I didn't know
Lemuria's
he did
really good
that.
about that. I think Redwood Barn's good. So yeah, that's great advice. If you can't find it, a lot of them will special order it for you and
Yeah,
get it in a week or two.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of like a treasure hunt. Do you know what I mean? Like I know that that sounds funny, but like it's kind of a treasure hunt to find these specific plants, but that's what makes it fun because you know that you're getting the right plant for the right place, you know what I mean? And like Helen von Stein Lamb's ear is constantly sold out at the garden centers, constantly. And I know it's because so many people grab that plant when they see it. Like I'm one of them, right? And they will go and they will take all 8 of the plants that they have available. So when you see it, grab it and be happy that you see it, because that's a great plant and everyone around here knows that it's just a great plant. And that's why I think sometimes it's kind of hard to find.
Well, I'd like to pitch too that the YOLO Master Gardeners have plant sales in the fall and in the spring. So in October, the first 2 weekend, or actually the first weekend in October, we'll have a plant sale out at Woodland Community College, and we do carry some natives, but we also have other great stuff. And in the spring and April, the first 2 weekends, usually in April, we have that. And also don't forget about the UC Davis Arboretum. They also have plant
Mhm.
sales in the spring and in the fall as well. So another couple
And
locations.
the California Native Plant Society in Sacramento, they have plant sales too. So you just have to sign up to all those mailing lists and you'll find your plant. Um, okay, Jeff has a question. He says, do you have any suggestions for shady dry plants that have blooms? So if you were to search this, Jeff, you would see it would say astilbe, right? Astilbe is a shady one that has beautiful blooms. I can't really get astilbe to grow very well for me here. Like, somebody speak up if they've gotten astilbe to grow pretty well for them, but I've always had a hard time with it. I would say if you were going to have a shady dry plant, I would say like an iris might be good, or a daylily would be really, really great, would be awesome. I know that there's some daylilies that you can find that can handle a little bit more shade. The begonias, the surefire white, surefire rose begonias are fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And then I just planted a plant this year. It's called Browalia. Browalia. I think it's an annual, but it's doing really, really well in my garden and it's blooming in full, deep, deep shade. There's also heuchera that is more of a foliage type plant, but it does have really beautiful blooms during the spring. And so that's a really good option too, but you could kind of rely on the foliage a little bit more for that. So if anybody has any other suggestions for Jeff, speak up.
Jeff, maybe the Western spice bush, the Calycanthus occidentalis. It's got
Mm.
an interesting red wine colored flower.
Looks
Um,
like a magnolia.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the leaves smell kind of like a wine barrel if you crush those. Another native is oh shoot, the bush poppy. I can't remember now. It slipped my mind what the name is. Come on, Sue, help me out.
what? You mean the
Carpenteria californica.
the ones that
No,
stand
no,
for
the
something.
Carpenteria californica, that one. It's a white flower with, it kind of looks like Matilla poppy, but it's not. It's on a bush.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, the
It-
Carpenteria?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's Carpenteria, California. I think it's called
Californica.
the cistus?
bush anemone or something like that. I think
Bush anemone. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. You're right.
Yeah. So there's lots of options, Jeff. You just kind of have to look around and find it. It blooms in shade is always a little bit tough, but I would definitely, if you can get your hands on, not to say one plant, but if you can get your hands on that begonia, I've had so much luck with that begonia blooming in shade. So it's a really good one.
Actually, another one that I grow all the time in shade that does really well is the columbines, and they're pretty small plants. But there's one plant, Aquilegia chrysantha, the western columbine. It's probably the biggest of the columbines, and it throws out tons of yellow flowers about the size of my hand if you give it enough water in the spring, and it attracts hummingbirds, and it blooms for a fairly long time, and the foliage is pretty after it finishes blooming, and it will even self-sow if you don't have your mulch too thick. I just sprinkle the seeds around when I'm cutting the seed pods down for the summer, and I have babies pop up all over, so it's really nice for dry shade.
Awesome. That sounds great.
If you want seed, I might have some.
Oh, yes.
Well, I'm active in the Master Gardener's plant sale, and I don't offer it every single time, but we do offer it fairly regularly as a plant that we sell.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions? These are quiet today.
They are.
The
last time I did it, I had tons of questions. All right. Well, thank you guys for putting up with me with my technical issues today. I've had so many people stare at me and see what am I doing here in the library, but that's all right.
Well, Janey, thank you for being persistent and going to the library, and it's very resilient of you, just like some of the plants you talked about.
Oh yeah. Oh, thanks, Mike.
So yeah.
Solving problems with plants.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think it was interesting to realize that even someone as experienced as Janey, makes a few mistakes once in a while and learns from them. And that's what we can all do, certainly.
Once in a while.
Yeah, if you don't make mistakes as a gardener, you're not trying. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. So, all right. Jennifer did put a link in the chat for the survey. And that's just for members of the public, not for master gardeners that may be watching. But if you are a member of the public, please take a look at that, copy it down. It's not a very long survey. Maybe 10 minutes, something like that. I think you can, extend it with additional comments, but the basics is pretty quick. So next week, actually next month is going to be Fruit Tree Month. And next session on the 14th of August, Bonnie Berman and I will start that. And that session is going to be kind of the basics of what fruit trees need, fruit tree selection and planting, fertilizing and irrigation. And then the second week, which is the 28th, we'll cover pruning, disease, and then a separate section on citrus. We'll talk about citrus a little bit throughout, but citrus is a little different than the the temperate fruit trees that many people want to grow. So we'll do a little separate section on citrus then. And if you enjoyed Sue Fitz's comments, Sue's doing a session, which I can't remember exactly what it is, but the next month Sue will be talking. So
cool season annuals.
What is it, Sue?
Cool season annuals.
Oh, there you go. Okay, cool season annuals. So good. All right. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. Again, take a look at the survey, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Janey.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks, Jennifer.
you.
Yep. Okay. Well, that was great. I gotta figure out how to get out of here.
I'll end it for all. How's